In this video, we are going to show you how to connect other applications with Triggre. The best way to do this is by using Zapier. Zapier is a platform that connects applications without the need to code. Almost all modern applications support Zapier. We start by making a new automation flow, which we will call Make New Task. We will use this automation flow in Zapier later to create new tasks based on received emails. To allow other applications to connect to Triggre, we have to start an automation flow using a connection trigger. Connection triggers can have inputs that we can use in the automation flow. Because we want to create a new task, we add a description and an email address as inputs. Now we can create the rest of the automation flow. In this case, we first find the user that belongs to the email address, and then we create a new task for that user. The automation flow is now done, but before we can use it, we first have to publish our application. Connections with other applications can only be used once they're in the application, not when they're in the design only. Now that our application has been published, we can create a connection in Zapier. We go to Zapier and log in using our account. You can do a lot with just a free account in Zapier, so if you don't have an account yet, you can simply make one. We will now make a process in Zapier that starts when we receive a new email. Zapier calls these processes zaps. The first thing we do is indicate this zap has to start when a mail arrives. We do this using Email by Zapier. As you can see, we now use the app called Email by Zapier and its event, New Inbound Email. We can easily create a test email address in Zapier. We copy the address so we can send an email to it later on. Zapier then asks us to test the step. Because there are no mails yet, this will not result in any data, so we skip this step for now. Next, we indicate what should happen when an email is received. We search for the app Triggre. Triggre has only a single option, and that is to call a Triggre interface. So we just leave this as is and continue. We then have to log into Triggre. However, this is not done using your regular account info, but rather using a special account used for connections. If you do not have these account details yet, you can simply request them with us. In the window that opens now, we enter the username and password and the environment we want to connect to. In our case, this is academy.triggre.net/lab. Connection is now authenticated and we can continue. The next step is to select the automation flow that we have made and published in Triggre. We have to supply the inputs we have defined earlier for the automation flow. We choose recipient as the email address. And as description, we use the subject of the email. This step is now ready to be tested. We see that the step is working correctly and can complete the zap and then turn it on. It is smart to give your zap a clear name, so we rename our zap to Create New Task for Inbound Emails. Our zap is now done. The zap is listed under My Zaps. This is how we can send data from other applications to Triggre and start processes using that data. It is now time to show you how to send data from Triggre to other applications. As the app, we choose Triggre now because we want this zap to start when something happens in Triggre. The only option we have is a change in the data in our Triggre application, so we click Continue. Then we have to select the Triggre account we want to use. We've already created this earlier, so we can simply choose our account. Now we have to select which data item we want to use and when. This is the same as a data trigger in Triggre itself. In this case, we choose for the moment that a new reservation is made. So, as the data item, we choose Reservation. And then we indicate that the zap must be started when new data is added. Then we can retrieve data from Triggre. We skip this step for now and go straight to the action in our zap. For the sake of simplicity, we use Zapier to send an email. Zapier indicates that an outbound mail will be sent as the action. That is what we want, so we click Continue. We enter our own email address at the recipient. As the subject, we use a standard text, New Reservation Created. In the message itself, we combine data from Triggre with some text. The other fields are optional. We can now test our step. The zap is now done, and we can complete it and turn it on. This way, you can very easily connect all sorts of applications with Triggre. There are connections for Office 365, Google applications, Salesforce, MailChimp, etc., 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 etc. The list is almost endless. This means that you can very easily use Triggre to create a process that directs and connects other applications, such as a CRM system, mailing application, and an Office suite. Possibilities are endless.